Hello, everyone. Um, I'm Vu, and I'm currently doing my PhD in Western Norway University of Applied Science, and my research focuses on designing the interface of radars and ECDIS and integrated navigation system, the purpose of which is to make sure the system are usable to seafarers. And doing right research, given the purpose of usability, I pay attention to human-centered design, the approach to design that makes sure the system would fit the needs and ability of users. And today I want to talk about the current practice of human-centered design in the maritime industry, the challenges and the improvements that can be made. So starting with the concept of usability, um, it is a characteristic of system characteristic that allow users to use the system to achieve the intended purpose with effectiveness, minimal effort, and with enjoyable experience. Um, During my research and after reviewing literature, I observed a problem with current practice of designing system in the maritime industry, in which the dominant focus is placed on technical functionality rather than usability. And that imbalance in focus leads to a problem that a lot of systems are designed to be technically functional, but they are difficult to operate. And it increases the chance that users make erroneous actions or the term human errors. And it has led to negative consequences, even accidents in the maritime industry. And I believe a more optimal way of designing products or system shall be a balance between usability and technical functionalities. And I mean, by that I mean more effort, more attention shall be paid to usability. And a way to do that is carefully consider the intended users during the design process, their limitations and their abilities, the context in which they're going to perform their tasks, and the problems they might encounter, and then design the system according to those information. Uh, and human-centered design is an approach to system design that can address all these goals. Um, so what is the status of human-centered design practice in the maritime field? Um, it has been applied in designing ships and shipboard equipment. And in an example case of human-centered design application in this industry is the design of the ro-ro vessel Harvest Leader. The design and construction of that vessel was presented here in Human Factor Conference in 2016 by the lead designer of the project. So that ship was designed in somewhat unusual way in the sense that the design team actually go out and seek out the crew of other ro-ro vessels in the fleet and interviewing the crew and finding out the problems that they have encountered on similar ships, on similar ro-ro vessels. And then the design team applied that knowledge into the whole design process from concept design to specific design of parts and equipment. And the result has led to improvement in several aspects, including habitability, operational functionality of the vessels. However, uh, cases like the Harvest Leader are uncommon. So designing for users is not a traditional way, not a traditional approach to system design in the maritime industry. The more traditional way is, like I have mentioned, it is technical focus. And mostly people would also view it from an economical viewpoint. And the naval architects, students, who are going to design vessels in the future are not educated in the topics of human factors and human-centered design. And the current generation of naval architects, well, most of them don't pay much attention to the topics. Um, we have conducted, our research group has surveyed several stakeholders in the maritime industry to identify their attitude and their practice in terms of human-centered design currently. And these are the results that we have found. For security reasons, I have encrypted the data, but I've just obtained clearance, so I'm going to encrypt the content now. So equipment manufacturers, they have, some manufacturers have already applied human-centered process in designing their products. However, they comment that designing for users is a difficult job to do. It requires additional resource, and they encounter a lot of difficulties in applying human-centered design practice, particularly in conducting user studies. And they have they have encountered challenges collecting data from users. For seafarer welcome the benefits that human-centered design would bring, but they comment that there's no feedback loop from users. So a product, during the development process, the manufacturer can obtain data and comments from input from users. But once the product is out there, is installed on board, there's no other feedback to be collected from users. So there's no feedback loop throughout the life cycle of the product. Ship owners, they comment that there's no concrete business case to convince them to make the investment. Um, insurance companies, insurance company comments that they they don't oppose the idea. Actually, in fact, they can lower insurance premium if there is evidence that designing system following a human-centered approach would lead to improve in safety. However, the data, they comment that data must be long-term and not easy to obtain. Regulators are still considering the approach. There's no concrete answer from them, but uh, the, the decision has not been made. Shipyards tend not to care much about the concept, except a single. So through our investigation, there was only one shipyard in Sri Lanka that actually show interest in investing in a human-centered design process. The rest, no. Naval architects, a good news is one, one of our colleagues had conducted a study on naval architect students from the University of Tasmania, and the results were positive. These students show very positive attitude toward designing. They understood the importances of designing for users and the consequences of lack of usability. And upon graduation, actually some of them have started applying the practice in their professional career. So those are the current status of human-centered design practice on the view. So we can see that in summary, it has been applied, but not systematically, and not every stakeholder support the initiative. So, uh, so to improve the situation, we, in collaboration with the Nautical Institute, we hold a focus group, a group discussion with 78 people, and they represent different sectors in the maritime industry. We invited equipment manufacturers, shipyards, naval architects, owners and managers, educators, researchers, and we also invited human factors specialists from the rail industry and aviation industry to take part in the discussion. And we divide participants into groups, 10 groups, ranging from 8 to 10 people in each group. And together, the groups discuss and propose solution to make human-centered design a more popular practice in the industry. And the group take turns to provide answer, to provide solution. And so afterward, we collected the answers and categorized them into categories. And those are the results that we got it from them. The first approach is, the first solution was raising awareness. So following the discussion, it was clear to us that not all stakeholders were aware of human factors or the concept of usability. Um, so it may stem from the fact that seafarers, even in civilian sector, share the can-do attitude with seafarers in the naval sector, in the military sector. So even though, well, that is the facility we are provided with, seafarers cannot choose the facility in which they can work with. So when they get on board a ship, even with low visibility, they would find a way to deal with it. So not everyone is aware of the concept of usability and human factors. And there was a need to increase awareness of the matter. And the participant proposed a solution to raise awareness specifically for certain groups of stakeholders. For seafarers, owners, and managers, the participant proposed that the most effective way to make them more aware of the problem is show them the accident reports where poor usability or improper design of system was listed among the contributing factors. And the pictures on the right side of the screen you can see here is the bow of the Pacenses ferry Seastrick Wall Street that collided with the pier in New York in 2013. The ship had suboptimal thruster control design, engine control design, and it confused the master of the active mode of propulsion control, and the design of that control panel was listed among contributing factors that led to that collision case. So for seafarers, owner and managers, accident reports would do. Participants also proposed that the topic of human factors and human-centered design should be incorporated into the general training program for crews and safety personnel at shipping companies. And lastly, they proposed that there should be similar events where all stakeholders or the majority groups of stakeholders in the maritime industry shall gather together and discuss the topic, and that would be a very good approach to raise awareness among the community. The second is the regulatory approach, and the proposed solution came mostly from the partner industry, from the rail and aviation industry, where they have very strict regulations concerning human factors. So firstly, we had a representative from the rail industry of the UK, and he commented that in the rail industry there are strict evaluation regimes where when a system getting approved, the manufacturer must demonstrate all human factor aspects that were considered during the design process. And we don't have similar regime in the maritime industry, and it was proposed that a similar evaluation regime shall be introduced for the design of ships and shipboard equipment. The second proposal was in the aviation industry, they have a solution called line operation safety audit, in which they would invite an independent evaluator to the cockpit, and that evaluator would observe the cockpit crew carrying out cockpit operations. He or she, the evaluator would observe the procedures, performance, and any other aspect that might impede the cockpit team performance. And a representative from the aviation industry proposed that similar solution to the line operation safety audit shall be introduced to the maritime industry, in which an independent surveyor might be invited to the bridge to observe the bridge team at work and pay attention to every aspect, such as procedures, crew awareness, and the design of bridge equipment may also be a factor to consider. So those are the regulatory approaches. The third solution was, so The manufacturer commented that designing system following a human-centered approach is difficult and costly. It requires additional resource. So a solution was proposed to lower costs and make the process simpler by developing a database developing design resource, and share them among designers and manufacturers. The first source was proposed to be a common database of user feedback and user data and design recommendations. It shall be in the form of a digital database where all manufacturers can access, and users can add to that, can build to the database by providing their feedback in terms of usability that they encounter during their live work, and manufacturers are encouraged to share their design solution and recommendations with each other. Um, it is not a new solution. Actually, the International Association of Marine Electronics Companies, the CIRM, has a similar solution at work. They have a user feedback forum where all seafarers around the world can register and leave comments about difficulties they encounter while working with marine electronic system on board. The system is there, the forum, it is a forum where seafarers can comment and provide information about usability issues encountered in real life practice. The forum is not, it failed to collect the majority, it failed to collect a lot of data of user input due to two reasons. The first reason was mentioned was that it's difficult for company to, it's difficult to get through internal approval from the company to post content in that forum. And secondly, some individual manufacturer, they have their own internal forum and they have their own group of users that provide feedback specifically for them, and they are hesitant in sharing those information with other manufacturers. So the solution is there. It has not been used extensively as it is now. Another source of resource that can be used that can simplify the design process is a library of design tools that designer can use. An example of that is so the Oslo School of Architecture and Design, in collaboration with a few shipping companies and marine electronics manufacturers, have collaborated in developing a set of UI components that they have been developed using a human-centered approach, and they are public, and manufacturer can access the components. The components have been tested to make sure that they are usable for typical seafarers, and manufacturer can just take them and employ them in their interface. It was proposed that similar solution to the OpenBridge project should be made. So a source of design tools that have been evaluated to be usable, and designer can take and use right away. So that was the third solution. And the last solution that they proposed was that it is to counter a challenge in employing human-centered design in the maritime industry. So one of the major challenges to human-centered design practice in the maritime industry is that the industry is huge and is fragmented in different sectors, and there are differences in construction, design, and operation of different ship types. So the participant proposed that adopting human-centered design shall not be made at an industry-wide level right away. It shall be started first at industry sectors with higher safety requirements, such as the cruise sector, and then subsequently applied to other sectors with less strict safety requirements. So to summarize, the four solutions they proposed, the participant proposed, was firstly, raise awareness, let people, let stakeholders in the industry be aware of the benefits of designing systems that are usable. And then the second approach is through regulations. The third is to make human-centered design an easier process by providing guidelines and resources that manufacturers and designers can use. And finally, employ human-centered design at a sector-based approach first. These are, the last line, I understand that the solutions are not concrete. They are abstract and vague at the current stage. But at least it's the beginning. It was proposed jointly by a group of relevant stakeholders in the maritime industry. So at least they reflect the collective and consensus view of the whole industry. And it can be considered a starting point to further implement, to further improve the consideration of users during the design of ships and shipboard equipment. Thank you for your attention. to further improve the consideration of users during the design of ships and shipboard equipment. Thank you for your attention.